Sort of like come out of the shower, towel dry it, put some
Like get creative
stuff on it, sort of like that, and there you're done. I'm done. It's quick. And on vacation, it was great. I never did anything.
Where'd you go?
Cancun.
Oh, nice.
Back to the same place we got married.
Yeah. But that was fun.
The day we arrived was our first anniversary. We had the kids along.
Okay, well that stifles a little bit.
Oh, it was fun. It was great family vacation. And we're on the air. Santa Mary.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 6:30, and I will call this regular meeting of the Burnsville City Council to order. It is our tradition to stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, and we invite you to join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have announcements this evening, and our announcements have to do with all of our upcoming meetings. We have council meetings scheduled for Tuesday, April 17th and May 8th at 6:30 p.m. and a work session that's scheduled for Tuesday, April 10th at 6:30 p.m. All meetings are held here in the council chambers. And now, this is a very, very important night for us here at Burnsville. And we have our Fire Chief, B.J. Jungman, who is going to come up and present some awards and recognitions. Chief.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, thank you for the time at the meeting to present these very important and prestigious awards to a bunch of our firefighters. So I got a little introduction here. As many of you may know, the Burnsville Fire Department was called on September 21st, 2010 at 7:28 a.m. to the Black Dog Power Plant on Black Dog Road for a fire in one of the large coal bunkers. The coal bunkers were about 70 feet tall and 50 feet wide. The coal bunkers were about 40% full of coal at the time. Xcel Energy employees had been smelling an unusual odor and were attempting to investigate and mitigate the situation to the best of their ability. Upon arrival, the first due unit was Engine 2 with Captain Paramedic Joel Clausen, who sized up the situation, requested additional resources, and sent fire crews in to gather information from the employees as well as their own observations. Fire crews found an extremely hazardous level of carbon monoxide in the atmosphere. Fire crews reported that information to Captain Clausen and immediately started to get Xcel employees out of the structure and eventually out of danger. Shortly after the Xcel employees were evacuated, the coal bunker experienced a large explosion while fire crews were still operating on the 6th floor of the power plant. The explosion blew the fire crew several feet from the location they were initially operating on, which could have been lethal since they were operating on catwalks 60 feet above the floor. The explosion tore apart the west wall of the plant and caused extensive damage to the interior of the plant. Immediately after the explosion, a distress call was transmitted by a crew member inside the plant. The fire crews met up with each other and assessed each other for injuries. The crews then exited the structure immediately until a second plan of action could be developed. To ensure the safety of our personnel and stability of the situation moving forward, they reconvened. The actions performed by the personnel being recognized tonight undoubtedly saved lives from being lost and further injuries from occurring. The professionalism, knowledge, skills, decision-making, values, and dedication are extremely exemplary of the personnel that make up the Burnsville Fire Department. Without these very brave and dedicated individuals of our department, we would not be able to have so many successful outcomes given the tragic events we respond to. All of the training, education, and experience that our personnel receive assist in making those split-second decisions that can make a difference in the outcome. The personnel that responded to the Black Dog Power Plant used all their training, education, and experience combined to create a situation where no one lost their life and only minor injuries were sustained. Without all the expertise that the Burnsville Fire Department is fortunate to have, within the ranks, there could have been a much different outcome. It is not very often that our department responds, or any department responds, to a power plant fire, thank goodness. Therefore, our personnel have to adapt to the situation at hand and use a combination of training, education, and experience that they have received collaboratively as a team. And I'd be remiss at this point if I didn't also include the collaborative effort of a number of agencies that assisted us, including our own police department, Apple Valley Fire Department, Bloomington Fire Department, Eagan Fire Department, and Alina Medical Transportation. These things on this large of a scale cannot be done alone. A situation such as the one our personnel encountered at the Black Dog Power Plant that September day are very rare, but are also catastrophic to an organization such as ours. Firefighters are a very tight-knit group of individuals that take pride in the work they do and work very well as a team. Following an incident of this magnitude, it takes a long time for the responders to both physically and mentally recover from such a catastrophic event. As many firefighters may not want to believe they are human, events such as the Black Dog Power Plant remind us of how important our commitment to the community and how our decisions we make are very real and meaningful, as well as vital to the successful outcomes of emergency scenes. I am very proud of our department, proud of what we have learned from this event, proud of the relationships that we have and have built from it, and proud of the deserving awards to our brave firefighters. So at this time, we'll move forward with the awards that we have. There's a number of firefighters being recognized tonight, and the efforts put forth by these firefighters during the emergency fire suppression operation at the Black Dog Power Plant to control the fire in the coal bunker and within the roof structure were significant and deserving of recognition. In the hours after the explosion, these firefighters operated inside the plant and also directed activities to extinguish the remaining smoldering fires, knowing it was their job to be there, but also unsure if subsequent explosions would occur. These firefighters distinguished him and herself by performing of his or her duties during extremely hazardous and adverse conditions in the coal gallery and on the roof. For those actions, these people are awarded the Burnsville Fire Department Commendation Bar of Meritorious Action. So I'll call them up one at a time. And unfortunately, not everybody can make it, and the crews that are on duty today, unfortunately, are out on a call. So I will recognize them at the end. FMO paramedic Cully Hauser. FMO paramedic Terry Ritchie, who is now promoted to captain at this time. Firefighter paramedic Mike Andrews. Firefighter paramedic Brian Carlson, who now holds the rank of assistant chief. Firefighter paramedic Andy Hamlin. Firefighter paramedic Michael Klarich. Firefighter paramedic Jason Knutson. Firefighter Paramedic Andy Leach. Firefighter Paramedic Ryan Paradowski. Firefighter Inspector Jan Trom. The following personnel were unable to be in attendance either because of work or conflicts of schedule: Captain Paramedic Joel Clausen, Captain Paramedic Paul Young, FMO Paramedic Jeff Gutzweiler, FMO Paramedic Scott Hanlon, Firefighter Paramedic Kyle Ingen, Firefighter Paramedic Tim Finley, Firefighter Paramedic Jamie Gerard, Firefighter Paramedic Dan Hale. Oh, I'm sorry, he's right there. Come on up. You snuck in on me. And Firefighter Paramedic Chris Canettle. We will move on to our next award. The department recognizes the Medal of Valor. Excuse me. Along with an Excel employee, these folks were one of the first crews inside the building on that day. Assigned to enter the building and proceed to the 6th floor, where the fire was suspected to be, the crew brought their hoses and necessary equipment up to the 6th floor, adjacent to the coal gallery. Their reconnaissance on conditions and report back to command. Shortly after making their way to the area of the fire, a deafening explosion occurred. Firefighters were literally blown off their feet onto the walkways. The force of the explosion blew one firefighter off the walkway, where he luckily landed 8 to 10 feet below, but suffered some knee injury that would require surgery and months off work. Spread out on the walkways nearly 7 stories high in the plant, unsure of what the cause of the explosion, or if another explosion would occur, and unsure if everyone had survived the blast, the crew of Engine 1 and Medic 1 kept their calm, relayed critical information to command, and exited the building. The information was instrumental in command ordering additional resources and requesting the plant be completely shut down and evacuated. This crew demonstrated their courage, expertise, and commitment to duty under extreme adverse conditions. Their actions, no doubt, decreased the injuries and potential fatalities that could have occurred if not for their actions. For those actions, Captain Paramedic Bill Schetzel, if you would come forward. FMO Paramedic Steve Boardman. Firefighter Paramedic Matt Ostendorf. And unfortunately, firefighter paramedic Tom Hale is the fourth one to receive the department's Medal of Valor, but he is out on a call currently. We'll move to our last award, which is the highest recognition, which is the Medal of Honor. Firefighter paramedic Sean Hill was assigned with fellow firefighters from Engine 1 and Medic 2 along with Excel employees to enter the building and proceed to the fire area. Firefighter paramedic Hill conducted atmospheric monitoring above the coal bunkers, which indicated lethal concentrations of carbon monoxide. Firefighter Hill, due to his experience and training, utilized acute situational awareness, immediately ordered the evacuation of the Excel employees operating in the area. Shortly after firefighter paramedic Hill evacuated the Excel employees, while he was still working in the power plant, alone, a level below his other firefighters, he witnessed the explosion and a massive fireball erupt directly at the spot his crew members were standing. In the confusion after the explosion, Sean was unsure if his four fellow firefighters, his friends, had even survived. Despite the confusion of the situation, Hill quickly declared a mayday into the radio reporting the explosion. A mayday is a distress call that is rarely declared, used to indicate a life-threatening emergency with at least one firefighter. The mayday call initiated a response of additional resources to rapidly move the firefighter or firefighters in peril. Firefighter paramedic Hill then immediately made his way back to the other fire crews that were operating inside the plant to ensure they were accounted for and safe. Firefighter paramedic Hill found the crews, assessed them for injuries, and then assisted in leading them out of the building. Firefighter paramedic Hill's quick action in recognizing hazardous atmosphere and evacuating the employees, there most certainly could have been serious injuries or death that could have occurred. Hill's composure after the explosion ensured everyone outside the plant knew the explosion occurred and got help on the way. Firefighter paramedic Hill demonstrated great courage in his actions under extremely adverse and dangerous conditions. On September 21, 2010, firefighter paramedic Hill saved many lives and prevented further injury through his actions that day. Firefighter paramedic Hill's actions speak volumes of his commitment to fulfilling his duties and values of the Burnsville Fire Department. For those actions, firefighter paramedic Hill is awarded the Burnsville Fire Department's highest recognition, the Medal of Honor. So, firefighter paramedic Sean Hill, if you would come up. Madam Mayor, members of the council, that concludes our awards, and I appreciate your support and willingness to allow us to hand those out at the council meeting tonight.
Thank you.
I'm having a tough time. Yeah, no. Tough time.
Chief, gentlemen, and firefighters, thank you so much for your service to our community. Thank you for all that you do, and we're proud of you and support you in your work. Thank you. And thank you to your families for all of your support. Thank you.
It's hard to conduct business after that, isn't it?
We now move on to the next item on the agenda, and that's citizens' comments. This is the opportunity for anyone in the audience to address the council on an item that is not on the printed agenda and not an application form that will be coming before us at a future date. Is there anyone to to address the council? Seeing no one, we will move on. The next item is for emergency items only, and this is additions to the final agenda. Mr. Ebling, are there any emergency items?
None proposed from staff, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Members of the council? Okay. You're good. We then will move on, and the next item is the consent agenda, and this is a grouping of items that's considered to be routine and will be enacted by one vote. However, an item can be removed for a separate discussion and vote. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes an item on the consent agenda to be pulled for a separate discussion and vote? Mr. Ebling?
Madam Mayor, staff requests that item 4G be continued until the next regular meeting, April 17th.
Okay. We will, I'll ask for a continuation, a motion for continue when we get to that point. Members of the council, anything else? May I have a motion for the balance, please?
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Keeley makes the motion, second by Councilmember Coughlin. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. Item G is to approve the software license hosting and professional service agreement for the agenda management software service, and staff is requesting that this item be continued. May I have a motion for continuance, please?
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Keeley makes a motion, second by Councilmember Sherry. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. Thank you. We move on to the regular agenda, and the first item on the regular agenda is a public hearing, and this is to consider a resolution to adopt the assessments for portions of Project 12-101 and 12-102, property owners in the Portland Homeowners Association. Mr. Peterson, this is round two on this one.
Indeed. Good evening, and thank you for having me tonight. And this is, as the mayor said, our Portland Homeowner Association Street Reconstruction and Rehabilitation public hearing for assessments. And I'll get into why we're doing that this time as we move along. We'll quickly go through the process of how we've gotten here. There's just the one public hearing for both projects, 12-101C Street Reconstruction and 12-102C Street Rehabilitation. And this is only for the property owners who own property in the Portland Town Home Association. How did we get here? In September, we ordered the study be complete. We completed survey work, preliminary plans. In January, we had a neighborhood meeting, and this is where we do get a lot of good information. In this case, this meeting served us really well. This is where the association really started talking to us about this, found out the information that only the front abutting parcels would be paying for the improvements, and the rear wouldn't. So we really got up to a good start on working on this, and we've been able to get to this point to spread it out how this association wants it, largely because of their actions of the association members at that meeting. We took notes at the meeting, completed our study, completed our plans. In March 6th, we had our public hearing to consider ordering improvements. That did pass, so we are going to move forward. We also approved deviating from our policy, assessment policy for this work at the same meeting. Now we're right here at April for the assessment hearing for the Portland Homeowner Association. After this, we'll bid the project. It'll be considered for award. We'll have another neighborhood meeting to let the neighborhood go who got the contract and that type of information, what you can expect, schedule. In May, we hope the project can begin. In August and September, then we go through the rest of the assessment stuff for all the other parcels affected by the work. And then we'll be complete about that time as well. So this is the 2012 Street Reconstruction Project 12-101C for the Wood Park North area, and 12-102C Portland Avenue Rehabilitation public hearing for members of the Portland Homeowners Association. What is reconstruction? That's when we completely rebuild the road, the new pavement, new base. We replace curb where it's deficient, and we make sidewalk and American with Disability Act repairs at the same time. We also look at all the underground utilities on this project. We aren't going to replace the water main here, but we will be making improvements to the hydrants. We look at all the sanitary sewer and fix those without having to dig the road out. We can fix it from the inside out as opposed to digging down. And then we do make drainage improvements to our storm sewer system to increase capacity and those sorts of items. So which parcels are affected by the assessment hearing tonight? That would be 143rd Street East from Portland Avenue to 175 feet east of the southerly cul-de-sac and the northerly cul-de-sac and the southerly cul-de-sac, And basically what this includes is all the parcels abutting the road and all the ones in the rear that don't abut, and that is the deviation that's being trying to be gained from the homeowner association. And that's the parcels in 12-101C Wood Park North area. These are some pictures of why we're doing the work on 43rd Street. This is the one of the cul-de-sacs. That's the other one. Obviously, I don't have any after pictures at this point yet. The project, the cost for the reconstruction is $1.1 million. That's what we're estimating. Of that, special assessments make up $400,000 approximately, or about 36% of the total project cost. Street rehabilitation, this is for the Portland Avenue rehabilitation. That's different. Basically there we're just resurfacing the road. We won't be replacing all the base. There won't be as much investigation into the underground utilities. We still fix up catch basins and manholes and that sort of thing, but there won't be any drainage improvements. We also replace concrete curb and gutter and sidewalks where they're failing. The parcels affected on this project for the association include Portland Avenue from 210 feet north of Portland Place down to 200 feet south of Portland Mews, and then of course the parcels that gain access on Portland Place and Portland Mews. And once again, it does include the rear parcels per their request. Here's a picture of Portland Avenue. Doesn't look quite as bad as the other one, and that's why we're rehabbing it instead of rebuilding it. The association areas, though, this is Portland Mews and Portland Place, and the roads there definitely do need the upgrade. Rehabilitation project for Portland Avenue area is over $600,000 will be our estimate. Of that, special assessments are $90,000. On this project, it's only 14% of the project. The difference is because we're rebuilding Portland Avenue, you're not going to collect as much in assessments on a major road as you would on a narrower road by a percentage. Okay, special assessments, how do we figure them out? They're based upon 40% of the street costs. We set the rate yearly, and that's based upon the past 3 years' costs of what it takes to do a similar project. It's also based upon each parcel's land use. So if you have a single-family home on a wide road that carries lots of traffic, you only have to pay for 40% of the cost of a narrower road, and vice versa. If you have a major business on a narrower road, we reduce the rate down so that you don't have to pay for what you're not getting. It's implemented by the amount of footage adjacent to the street being improved. So you have that rate, you multiply it by the amount of footage you have adjacent, and that is your assessment amount. Typically, multiple owner parcels share equally for total frontage of parcel. Most associations have common land, and then it automatically gets split up amongst all the owners of that common land. In this case, the common land there is no common land. The people who own the front-based parcels, they own all the land abutting. So therefore, the folks in the back would never have received an assessment if it wasn't for the association telling us this is how we want to do it. So we will be splitting it up equally should we be successful tonight. And then all the utility costs are paid for by the city. There's not assessments for that. We've already been over that one. So the special assessments, 12-101C Wood Park North reconstruction. There's 96 parcels in there. What we do is, in this case, we are multiplying the rate times the footage, and then figuring out what that amount is. And then we're taking the total number of parcels that are in that association, both front and back, dividing the number of parcels and spreading it equally amongst them all. So on the association there for reconstruction on 143rd Street, that equates to $863.38 per unit to be spread equally amongst all the units. They can be, the city will finance those over 15 years at 5% interest rate. We don't have to see payment on this until October, just like everybody else who gets the assessments in September. So there's no penalty for those homeowners by doing this in April compared to the other ones I'll be doing in September. On the 12-102C Portland area rehabilitation, on that there's 52 properties. Once again, we take the total footage, multiply it by that rate, get a total, divide it by the total parcels front and back, and then we get a amount per unit. So in that case, it's $458.70 per unit. On this one, you can pay it off over 5 years, once again with the interest rate of 5% if you want to do it that way as opposed to paying it all in the year 2012. At this point, the comments we've gotten have been we haven't really actually gotten comments. And if a resident does want to officially object, it needs to be in writing by the end of this meeting. Objections will not be taken after this. So with that, this is the public hearing for 12-101C Wood Park North area and 12-102C Portland Avenue area for the property owners in the Portland Homeowners Association. With that, I would stand for any questions. Once again, since public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Any questions for Mr. Peterson? Thank you very much. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone to speak to this item? Is there anyone to speak to this item? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Members of the council, your pleasure.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Councilmember Gustafson, second by Councilmember Sherry. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item is item number 6, and this is to consider an application for Quarry Properties, LLC, for a plan unit development amendment to allow outdoor storage of materials as an interim use in the floodway located at 1001 Black Dog Road. We're asked to consider the findings of fact, the ordinance, amended plan unit development agreement, and the interim use permit. Mr. Slania, our planner, is presenting this evening.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. The Planning Commission reviewed this project at their meeting last week, March 26th. They reviewed the storage and crushing of the concrete. Again, it is in the floodway and thus requires an interim use permit. You can see on the visual aid the location of the property. I-35W is off the page to the right. Highway 13 is off the bottom of the page. This is the sole piece of property under discussion tonight. The applicant does own the adjacent property to the east. Here's another image of the subject site, the McGowan Quarry, and again the freeway landfill adjacent to the property. The commission discussed the use, the operation. There was quite a bit of discussion revolving around the noise emitted from the site. Again, this is an interim use permit. The Planning Commission and staff put together a number of conditions to help mitigate any noise that would be coming from the facility. Again, the concrete crusher is not permanently located on site. It is a portable piece of equipment that's brought in when the concrete reaches a feasible amount for the applicant to bring it in, crush it, sell it, and take it off site. Staff also indicated, discussed with the Planning Commission, hours of operation, 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, nothing on the weekends, as well as a limited number of days. Let me jump to the conditions. Number 4, the applicant is entitled to 3 10-business day periods to allow for crushing between June 1st and November 1st. Again, this is the time when most people will be outside or have their windows open, when they will be most impacted by the noise, along with the other conditions. Again, here's another image to put the site in perspective with the river. This is the location where the concrete would be stored and crushed. The Minnesota River, the interstate. Again, staff recommended approval of this. There was a public hearing held at the Planning Commission. Resident of Bloomington at 2261 Overlook Circle attended the meeting, raised concerns again with noise and other nuisances that could be raised from the project. In the end, the Planning Commission 4-1 voted in favor of the recommendation with the conditions that are in front of you tonight. Madam Mayor, Council, Mr. McGowan's available for questions, and I'll stand for any questions the Council has.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Slania? Councilmember Sherry.
Mr. Slania, on the conditions, the stockpile is limited to 6,000 tons, correct?
Correct.
What does 6,000 tons of concrete look like? I mean, like as big as this room, or do you have any idea?
Give or take about as big as this room. Actually, it's not. It weighs quite a bit because of the material that's there, but it is not a substantial mass of concrete that you may think. Staff has been on site, visited with the applicant. We have a good idea what that is. We would certainly notice if there were 2 or 3 or 4 times that much concrete on site.
So as a follow-up, so when it reaches 6,000, then they've got to bring in a crusher and get rid of it, correct?
That is the most they can store. Not knowing the applicant's business plan, we're assuming that's when the crushing would occur, bring it down to 0 and begin stockpiling.
And then once it's crushed, is there another pile that starts to grow? In other words, are we going to have 2 6,000-ton piles, possibly one crushed and one not crushed?
No, in the conditions, staff indicated that we're limited to one stockpile. The intent of the applicant is once it's crushed, immediately or soon thereafter, it is taken off-site, sold, and used elsewhere.
Thank you.
Mr. Slaney, this question is for you and probably Community Development Director Ms. Faulkner. In our contract with the property owner, and because there is concern about noise, and having some history about this particular property and noise, going back to the amphitheater days, does the contract have any language in place that says if we do have to do a noise analysis that the property owner is responsible for that cost?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, our standard language in our PUD agreements requires the developer or the applicant to cover any costs that the city has in enforcing that agreement, thus the PUD. There's not a specific amount set aside for that, but if we do have to do testing under our current standard language, they would have to reimburse the city for any costs.
Okay. Because I see that Bloomington's letter asked for a discretionary EAW, Environmental Assessment Worksheet, and we're waiving that and not doing a discretionary EAW. So is there something in the contract that reflects that we're not doing it? But because they're concerned about noise, and a lot of the complaints that we had during the amphitheater time was about noise, and this is during the day when people are outside and in the summertime.
Correct. Chris, do you want to talk about the noise MPCA decibel levels that we anticipate here?
I saw the decibel levels, but
Certainly. Madam Mayor, if I can just interject, we did include the decibel levels in the conditions. Also, condition number 10 does indicate that the violation of any of those conditions, even specifically the noise, would be deemed violation of the CUP and thus could be brought back to the Planning Commission and Council for revocation.
yeah, I saw that. Is that a one-time violation?
Correct.
So if the violation is one time, it's not 3 strikes and then you come before us. It's
Correct.
Okay.
The way it's written, it is a one-time violation, and it would be up to the City Council and or the Planning Commission to review options what to do with the request.
Okay. Ms. Faulkner?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, a big issue here had to do with the floodplains. A lot of these requirements are coming on that because the city has an obligation to maintain compliance. And with FEMA, we do not want to be in hot water with them. So that's where a lot of the conditions about violating any of these conditions could revoke the IUP because we just don't want to have to deal with the enforcement issues. Same thing with the noise issues or the volume issues. We can put, and that was a discussion of the Planning Commission, a separate condition requiring an escrow deposit for enforcement. The Planning Commission in the end voted not to do that, but if that's a concern, rather than us bearing the costs up front and then billing the property owner and collecting it in the event we have to do it versus having the cash in escrow and us just using that, that's another option for you to consider. That's what the Planning Commission had also discussed.
Yeah, I know. I saw that. And we've always had, when we've had these developments or that might have cost to us in the past, we've always had an escrow in place or a letter of credit. But I did see that a lot of that discussion took place and went down, but I don't know where the council stands on something like that, what would that amount be for a analysis?
Our estimate for, go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council. I spoke to two different engineering firms in the metro. They gave me a pretty broad estimate, but it did involve a trip out to the site, multiple readings, meeting with the property owner, analysis, all of that, approximately $2,500 per visit. And I told them about an hour per visit. So it would certainly depend how many trips we requested out of them.
Okay. Council, I think it's something that we need to consider. Do we want to front the cost if there are disputes and complaints and then bill the property owner, or do we want to have a letter of credit? Or a letter of credit will allow the property owner to put that money in the bank, but it's set aside and it's in his bank, and so when it's needed, we get the money. Or an escrow, that money comes to us and we put it in escrow to use if there's a need. So, Councilmember Sherry.
Well, I did note on condition number 8, we're already asking for a security of $10,000 in cash or letter of credit for the removal, in case the removal of the material has to be made. So, in other words, we're already going in that direction. So
Do you want it a little bit more flexible, that not just the removal of the material, but if we are with any other costs?
We could do that, or have another condition that would add to that. I mean, in the same way.
Yeah. Well, if the applicant is already working with staff and that letter of credit of $10,000, could that be more flexible, that if we need the money from that for a sound analysis, that we could use that money as well, depending on if there is a balance on it. But
So
right
that-
here, it's only saying to provide a security removal of materials
if in case there's a flood.
in case there's a flood.
So flood or noise, both.
Yeah. I don't know. Mr. Jamnik, what do you, is that?
Mayor and council, if it's the will of the council, we could amend that condition 8 to add in, after removal of the material, the words "and reimbursement of city expenses in enforcing or administering the permit conditions," and then that would wrap all the other conditions, including the noise, as part of that letter of credit or that security.
Yeah.
If you're interested in doing that, you
I
can
mean,
do
he's
that.
already agreed to that, so I'm just wanting it to be a little bit more flexible. What are your thoughts? Councilmember Campbell.
Is this system working, Dan? And I touched our buttons a long time ago, and we're
Oh, it's not on.
sitting here like
Oh, I'm
you know,
sorry. I'm sorry.
lighting up the Christmas tree lights here. It's not working.
Councilmember Gustafson. Yeah. I'm sorry.
I hear what you're saying, Madam Mayor. In this particular case, the applicant has been, his family's owned land in this city forever. Have we ever had an issue when we billed this landowner for anything that we've done down there? That would require this type of an additional escrow?
I'm not asking for an additional escrow. I'm just saying, can it be a little bit more flexible?
Okay, that's what I'm just trying to get at, is why are we asking for the escrow if, in case there's a complaint from across the river?
Ms. Faulkner, I think I'll have staff answer that rather than my experience on.
Yeah, I think that's the line of
Amphitheater.
questioning, and that's what the Planning Commission was posed the question to, rather than the city front the costs for enforcement and send the bill, then just to have a letter of credit up front to assure that the funds are there to do the testing.
But I guess what I'm asking, have we ever had any issues collecting from this landowner whose family owned this land for as long as the city's been a city?
Councilmember Gustafson, members of the council, it's a tough question. I think there may be some outstanding are there outstanding bills with the amphitheater project? Some of the stuff predates me that I don't know, and I probably shouldn't speak to, but.
Mr. Ebling?
Madam Mayor, everybody seems to be looking at me.
Well, because
You seem to have the answer down there.
I know that you had this little hiatus away, but you came back, but you've been very involved with all of that had to do with the amphitheater.
There's an extensive history on this
Yeah.
property.
Yes.
Which means what?
A lot of ups and downs. We've had transactions of various different sorts. I am aware of no outstanding obligations by the landowner.
So if we billed them, they paid us.
You don't put words in my mouth.
Well, okay.
There's, as I said, there have been a lot of things that have transpired on the property over the years. The landowner does not owe the city any money whatsoever. He's not in arrears in any way.
Thank you.
Okay, I see that Mary Sherry is next, and then Dan
Oh,
Keeley.
no, actually, that's an old one.
Okay, then it's Dan. Councilmember Keeley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't see any reason at all to put any more encumbrance of funds on this property owner based on his history and Craig's. I think what you were getting to is
Making this,
there is an existing $10,000 security. Just
making it flexible. And-
broaden that to include the cost of it. I can't imagine if I were Mr. McGowan that would cause me any ill will because it's the money's encumbered anyway. I would not put any further burden on him than this.
No,
So,
I'm just looking at what can we just make that a little bit more flexible and add, not just removal of material, but if there is a need for a noise analysis, that we could use those funds.
yeah, and I'd like to hear from Mr. McGowan on that point. And I have another question, so if you wouldn't mind coming to the mic, Mr. McGowan.
Councilmember Keeley and Mr. McGowan?
If we get a complaint from a resident from Bloomington, what obligation do we have at all to respond to it?
Being a good neighbor, that's all.
Well, we were too good during the amphitheater project, so I think they've played all their credits.
Actually, they took us
in
to
my
court.
opinion. Yeah, I know.
Yes, sir.
They've used up all their credit bank, so they don't have any credibility here.
If I can, Counsel, to your question, Madam Mayor, if we have a condition that the noise level cannot exceed 65 decibels at any property line in or outside of Burnsville, we do have an obligation to enforce this agreement, no matter where the complaint comes from.
And that was part of the issue during the amphitheater, and that's why it
Well.
went in that direction and went to court several times. Councilmember Coughlin, and then well,
But I assume that means to our Attorney Joel that if there's a reasonable basis for that complaint, it doesn't mean that if somebody complains that they don't like the noise, that imposes upon us an absolute obligation, to go out and do a noise check. I assume that the city will at least make some sort of preliminary assessment as to, and if we receive same or similar complaints over and over just because someone doesn't like it, that we'll just write them a letter.
Yeah.
They can always go hire their own expert, and if then it raises, well, no.
yeah,
if
and
it
they've
raises,
done that, and
well, but-
the folks across the river have done that.
Right, and then show, then that might change the deal.
You know, Councilmember Coughlin, the points that you bring forth are very valid points. When a complaint comes, our process is that there is a review of that complaint to determine whether that it has exceeded the decibel level, and then. But also the folks across the river can also do their assessment as well, and they've done that in the past. And so, but the thing is, I'm just looking for flexibility on number 8. So the money is already encumbered, it's there, instead of just materials, if we need, that we could use it for that as well. That's what I'm thinking.
Could I get Mr.
Yeah, Mr.
McGowan's
McGowan.
response to that request?
Mr. McGowan, are you all right with, just in case, you've been through this before.
May I respond?
Yes, please.
Mayor, Council, Michael McGowan. First of all, it was brought up at the Planning Commission meeting that the concrete crusher that will be brought in has a permit from the Pollution Control Agency and meets noise standards.
Yep.
And that the effective noise standard is at the closest residence to that device emitting the sound. I also said at the Planning Commission meeting that I have a letter on file from 1985 when we were crushing the limestone that was in our quarry, where the City of Burnsville received complaints from the residents of Burnsville, and the City of Burnsville staff responded to the complaints to hear nothing. My concern is that, based on our experience with the amphitheater, that the city will be receiving numerous phone calls for no reason. So however you choose to word it, I hope there is a certain amount of reasonableness that enters into the conditions.
Absolutely, Mr. McGowan, and I agree with you on that, and that's where Ms. Faulkner has said that it has to exceed the decibel level that is in the contract with you. And so, but in terms of if the complaint comes in and it exceeds that.
If I may
Yes.
follow up.
Councilmember Key.
And then I know that they wanted to speak as well. That was what I was getting to, is what triggers. I don't want the language put in there, and then a few phone calls come in, and suddenly he's funding 3 visits or 2 visits that are absurd.
Sure.
I think there's some burden of proof on the complainer first, for Mr. McGowan is held accountable to fund any kind of noise, when in fact he's already done that with this equipment coming in, being below that decibel level that's specified in this deal. So anyway, that's what I was.
Okay. Councilmember Sherry, and then Councilmember Gustafson, and then Councilmember.
Well, and I agree. I mean, I'd like to see that language tweaked on number 8, but to be careful with it, because I was on the Planning Commission during the amphitheater adventure, and it is a pit. I mean, it really is deep down there. I've stood in it, and I think that the noise is not likely to be a problem. There's another concern I have, and I think this goes along with what Councilmember Keeley is concerned with, and that is that the neighbors across the river, 3/5 of a mile or more away, they bought that property across from an industrial area. It's been industrial for decades, and I think that there is. As long as it remains that way, and I know it won't be forever, we should allow our businesses to operate there, and that I think that the neighbors, any neighbors, when you move next to something that is operating legitimately within the zoning, that, you know what, that's the way it is. I think, though, that the burden of proof should be on the complainers.
Absolutely.
My fellow council members pretty much covered what I was going to say. I just don't want to spend Mr. McGowan's money because a couple people in Bloomington want to register complaints.
Yeah. Councilmember Coughlin.
Mr. McGowan, are you satisfied by the council's conversation and comment that you have made your point, and I believe we made the point to the city officials as well, and that if in fact there's multiple complaints, you and the city officials can get together and go out there and see if, check it out or something, and that we're understanding of your concern.
It needs to be, I'm sorry.
But I don't think there's possible language that could be added. Unless our attorney tells us otherwise. Again, there's a hard limit, and that says cannot exceed that. And you've already expressed that you'll come with evidence already that your equipment will meet that standard, so that, but I don't think you can, put language in say that somebody else maybe us, I don't know, step forward to
Mayor,
prove.
I don't think you need to do that. any more than we have to have language addressing how we enforce the speed limits on city streets. A single complaint does not necessarily result in saturation patrols of a neighborhood. However, upon investigation, if there is a problem, staff has the responsibility or the authority to address that issue. So I don't think you need to add additional language in there. I think that language is implicit in all our permits and all our enforcement measures.
Okay. Mr. Ebling?
Attorney Jamnik has encapsulated very well. If someone from the River Bluff over there was to call and complain, I know that Ms. Faulkner is not going to dispatch city testing out there to rack up a bunch of bills. If, on the other hand, we visit and it really seems very, very, very loud to us, and we say, gosh, this could be a problem, in order for us to adequately make the case that there is a problem, we may have to do the testing. But that's not something that we would automatically just rush out and do. A lot of these things are intended to deal with kind of the extreme conditions that don't happen all that often.
All I'm just asking is and if you think we can make it reasonable and you understand that it's just so that it's not just for the removal of materials, but if the complaint on noise, I just want to make sure that we cover all of our bases, Mr. McGowan. Mr. Councilmember Keeley?
Madam Mayor, what happens if, sufficient number of complaints come in and it seems loud and we do a test and it's below that number? Who pays for that?
That has never...
I mean, because what we hear, audibly by our ears might sound loud, but it may register at 55 and not exceed the 65, and then who's going to pay for the testing when it was unnecessary in the first place?
Mr. Ebling, I'm not...
Well, I think strictly speaking, the language in our standard form agreement says that the applicant needs to offset the cost of enforcement. If, in fact, I suspect that the data indicated that there was nothing there to enforce, that then the city would need to offset those costs. Okay. If, on the other hand, the costs showed that there had been a violation, then it would clearly be the applicant's responsibility.
I'm okay with that. Thank you.
So those procedures are in place?
Okay.
Okay. All right. Mr. McGowan, are you all right with just adding one more thing? So to number 8, material and possible noise?
Based on the McGowan 50-year experience with the city of Burnsville, I trust that the city of Burnsville will be reasonable.
Thank you. And we have been. Thank you so much, Mr. McGowan. We appreciate your cooperation. Okay, members of the council, are you in favor of just amending condition 8 to add removal of materials and noise abatement analysis?
As noted by
Yes.
Ms. Faulkner?
Yes, and Mr. Jamnik has the language that he read to us. Councilmember Sherry.
I move for approval for the planned unit development amendment with that condition, that change to condition number 8.
Okay.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. And the motion carries. Good luck. And thank you. Members of the council, there are no other items to come before us this evening, and a motion to adjourn is in order.
So moved.
Councilmember Keeley makes the motion, second by Councilmember Coughlin. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. And the motion carries. Good night, and thank you for being with us.